Alright, in today's video, I'm going to go over how to potentially fix a mushy brake pedal in an 8th gen Honda Civic. That's 2006 to 2011, I believe. This particular car is a 2008. That's not in very good shape with 220,000 miles on it or so. Now, this is not my particular car. I'm trying to help somebody out. And the issue was a mushy brake pedal with very weak braking performance. Now, before I waste y'all's time finding out what the fix was, the fix was a brake booster replacement that was most likely caused by a very small leaking master cylinder, leaking fluid onto the seal between the brake booster and master cylinder, causing a seal failure, and brake fluid also leaking to the brake booster. That was what the actual fix was the brake booster and master cylinder replacement. But I'm going to go over the problems the car was having, how I diagnosed it, what I fixed it with, where I acquired the parts, how much they cost me, and how to potentially just get used parts off of a lower mileage Honda Civic and save some money. So I said the car had very weak braking performance, very soft brake pedal. Car is from a rust belt area, very bad rust. First time ever working on a car that's so rusted out. But it appeared to have the original rear brake drums, shoes, and everything. I went and got those off. Luckily, I cleaned everything up. I replaced a few spring clips that were rusted out, but the shoes were in okay condition. The drums probably could have been replaced, but we're trying to keep the cost down on this particular project. And if I'm going to replace with drums, I'm typically only going to use the higher quality drums, as the cheap drums can end up causing some problems of not being machined right and wanting to pull the brake shoes out. The wheel cylinders were kind of fine in the back. They appeared to be original, but I cleaned everything with some brake clean, brushed everything out, did the best I could to try to adjust the shoes out a little bit farther so they fit the drum a little bit tighter. This also took care of the parking brake adjustment. So then I moved to the front. The pads appeared to be in decent shape, but I don't know the pads that were installed in the car. If they were a poor quality, cheap pad, that can really cause some brake pedal performance issues and just braking performance in general. Stay away from cheap brake pads. So I went ahead. Normally I would replace the rotors in this situation, but once again trying to keep the cost down, the rotors appeared to be in somewhat decent shape. Personally, it was my car, I replaced them, but this car did not. They were not really tore up at all. They were still smooth, and went ahead and reused them. Brake rotor prices seem to be up right now anyway, especially for your mid-range or quality brake rotors. So I went ahead and put new pads on it. Pads were about $40. I normally get parts from Rock Auto. This was a mid-quality pad, OEM pad equivalent. And I also went ahead and replaced brake calipers with brand new brake calipers. The brake calipers that were on there appeared to be original. They were extremely rusty, including the cylinder bore and the caliper piston itself behind a seal had some rust on it, as well as the brake sliders. Even though they were greased, it looks like the brake job was done somewhat properly on this car in the past, but there was a lot of rust in those holes. So I went ahead and put brand new calipers on it and new pads. Went ahead and ran a couple quarts of brake fluid through the system, and braking was definitely better, but still very mushy and soft. So I started looking at potential causes and realized I needed to perform a brake booster test, which I'm going to show y'all here in a second. I'm gonna grab a hose so I can show you how to check the brake booster check valve that's in line on these cars, as well as show you what the pedal should look like as you start the car to do your brake booster check. So just give me a second. Alright, I got some parts laid up on top of the hood I'm going to go over, and then after that we'll go inside the car and I'll show you the brake booster test. So this hose is going to represent the brake booster to engine vacuum hose, which is behind this air box. Basically, do anything on this car, you got to take the whole air box assembly out, take the cowl out, and I'll kind of go over that towards the end of the video of what needs to be removed to actually do this job. So you got this hose that represents So we'll say this side here is the engine, and then this side here is the actual brake booster. So the side that connects to your engine, when the engine is running, it's pulling the vacuum through this hose and putting the brake booster under vacuum. There's an internal check valve that is inside the hose. It's very small. It's actually in the hose itself. So what you're going to want to do is you're going to want to take your side that is connected to your engine, and so you got the hose disconnected, and you can take the side that is connected to your engine, and you're going to want to try to pull air. So suck air through it, and you should be able to suck air through it, because once again the engine is under vacuum. It's trying to pull the air and put the brake booster under vacuum, but it needs to be able to keep it under vacuum once you shut the engine off. So the same side that you just pulled air through, see if you could pull air through it, making sure the check valve's not clogged up. I can pull air through it. Now if I try to blow air into it, I shouldn't be able to blow air into it on the engine side, because that check valve is going to keep air from going in this direction. It only allows it to go in this direction, and that allows that brake booster to stay under vacuum when the engine is off. And that's a safety feature in case your engine stalls out, for whatever reason, and you need to use your brakes. If you have a leaking brake booster or a check valve that's not holding air, what's going to happen is you're going to have absolutely no brake advantage on that master cylinder. It's basically going to be like having manual brakes for a brake system that was designed to have a brake system assisted with vacuum. So it's a safety feature to retain that brake booster under vacuum even if the engine stalls out. So it's a really simple test though. I mean, I went ahead and I actually replaced my check valve just to do it. Unfortunately, the part is no longer available. It shows it is on the Honda part OEM site, so I went ahead and ordered one several days later. Got an email saying they couldn't get the part. So I went and put an aftermarket check valve in there. I'll put the part in the description of the video. It was like 11 bucks. I put a heavy duty, fairly large one in there that's meant for like old school, like German cars. I just cut the old one out and inserted it in between there. But there was really nothing wrong with the check valve. I just went ahead and done it just to do a test on it and stuff and look at it and examine it. So this is the old brake booster. Okay, now when I pulled this out, I pulled it out with the master cylinder and everything attached to it. So this is your brake booster. Let's back this camera up here. And basically, this is your area where your vacuum is being applied. Okay. Now, if you just try to apply a vacuum to this brake booster, it's going to pull air right into there anyway. It's not going to, you're not going to be able to test it like this on this particular setup, because you need that seal there, and that master cylinder seals against this. Now this is a sealed unit. You'd be able to apply vacuum, and this would go under vacuum. Now the problem, what I believe was wrong with this brake booster, is this seal is very deteriorated. It is very deteriorated, and you can see that brake booster. See how nasty it is. But I believe what was happening is the master cylinder itself. This is the back of your master cylinder. That seal, when you get a new one, if you get a replacement master cylinder, there's going to be a seal inserted in there. I believe what was happening there was a very small leak, because when I pulled this off, there was some moisture back there. This had a very small leak of seepage that was leaking onto that seal. It damaged that seal over time, and it leaked into the brake booster as well, and the brake booster was no longer holding vacuum. Now, if you're pulling one of these parts to like a junkyard or something, and you just had the brake booster itself, you really can't test it, because like I said, if you try to pull vacuum under it, it's just going to pull air through this hole. But if you pull the whole assembly and the master cylinder is attached to it, if you hook a vacuum pump up to it, if you have one, something like this Mighty Vac, and you try to apply vacuum to this, you should be able to eventually pull this under vacuum. But if you go, 30, 40 pumps with a vacuum pump and you can't get this thing under vacuum, you definitely have a pretty severe leak. The engine can still put it under vacuum because it's pulling so hard, but as soon as you shut it off, it's going to lose all that vacuum immediately. So let's go in the car and I'm going to show y'all the function test as well as the brake booster leak test in the car, so you can make the determination if that is what is wrong with one of the things that is wrong with your car. And then after that, I'm going to go over where to acquire these parts and how maybe you can get in a junkyard part. Don't have to import yourself, get it through eBay or something like that. Maybe the best route to go, especially with the age of this vehicle. All right, guys, we are inside the car. As you can see, this car is definitely wore out by how wore the floor mat is, carpet. We're going to do the brake booster test. Now, the car is off right now, and if I put my foot down on this brake pedal, you know, it's fairly firm. So, I'm just gonna hold my foot on it, like so. Now, by the way, if my foot is on this pedal right now, and it just starts sinking to the floor, or whatever, it just starts to sink, you either have a leak in your brake system somewhere, in your hydraulic circuit, or you have a master cylinder that is internally leaking and bypassing fluid. So I'm gonna start the car. My foot should sink. If my foot does not sink, the brake booster has completely failed, or something has, or the hose is off of it. This is called the function test of the brake booster. See how my foot just sunk like that? That is the function test. Now, the brake booster that was on here did pass the function test, but it did not pass the leak test. So let's do the leak test. Now, my foot is on here. It's pressed down. I'm going to turn the car off. I should be able to keep my foot down on this pedal for at least 30 seconds. Car is off. No problem keeping my foot down. On this particular car, it wouldn't pass the test for a second. As soon as I turned the car off, it immediately started pushing my foot up with significant force. I could not keep it down. Brake booster was leaking. Was not holding vacuum at all. No issues keeping my foot down. Pedal's not sinking either, so I know the master cylinder is not bypassing fluid. No issue. I'm going to let this brake pedal up. Now, there's another test that's part of the leak test. If it's past this, you're probably good anyway. But you should be able to get a few pumps out of your brake booster before it runs out of vacuum. It shouldn't become immediately hard, so you may hear some whooshing. One, I had some assist there. Two, a little bit less assist. And third, basically, yeah. So you basically got 3 pumps out of it. We'll do this one more time. Down, function test passed. Stays down, leak test passed. Up. Came up, no problem. Basically, about 75% assist there. Some assist there. At this point, no assist. That's just straight manual pedal. But you can see how much, like, I got my foot pressed down as hard as I can right now. And this goes all, you can see how far you can push your foot down. And then up. Okay, so that is the function and leak test. Now, in this particular car, like I said, it passed the function test, but it miserably failed the leak test. It did not hold vacuum for a second. Let's go back outside and get out of this car. And I am going to go over where I acquire the part, what years you can use, what models you can use, to the best of my knowledge from research I've done, as well as what's actually involved in changing this thing out. Alright, so let's go over that whole idea of where to get the part and the part replacement itself. Okay, so like I said, I got the brake booster and master cylinder as one assembly. I got it off of eBay for $55. That includes shipping, off a 2010 Honda Civic with 120,000 miles on it, versus this one being a 2008 with about 220,000 miles on it. So quite a big difference there and the mileage is also being 2 years newer. Now, for the brake booster itself, from 2006 to 2011, all the Honda Civics use the same brake booster. Also fits some other Honda products as well. You can always go to Rock Auto, which is where I like to use. Click on information on the part number, well, not the information, but the part number next to the info section, and it will actually show you all the cars that is listed for. It doesn't show you trim or engine. It just shows you the make and the model of the car and the year range. So I know from the fact that 2006, 2011, all the Honda Civics use the same brake booster. Okay, but they don't use the same master cylinder. And like I said, I replaced this as a whole assembly. I bought it with the master cylinder attached to here. All right, 2006 to 2011 sedan models. DX and LX models. 2006 to 2011 DX and LX sedans all use the same master cylinder. Now, starting in 2009, I believe Honda started making electronic stability control an option in 2009 on the EX and EXL models. I don't know if it was standard. I believe it was optional. So if you have an EX 2009 and newer, especially if it has rear disc brakes, I don't know if they all had rear disc brakes on the EX model, but if you have a 2009 newer with rear disc brakes and you have electronic stability control, that's not going to work. They use a different master cylinder. So, and that goes back and forth. So if you have, say, a 2010 Honda Civic DX or LX, you cannot use a master cylinder off of EX with electronic stability control. If you have a 2010 EX with electronic stability control, you cannot use a master cylinder off a 2007 Honda Civic DX. It's not going to work. The difference is the port size on the master cylinder. The DXs and LXs and non-stability control models use a 10mm port versus the other ones use a 12mm port. Now the coupe, I believe the coupe uses the 12mm port master cylinder throughout its whole range. Also, okay. And then also the Civic Si. So the Civic Si uses, at least on the aftermarket parts replacement, uses the same master cylinder as the EX with electronic stability control. So if you have a Civic Si, either you need to get the master cylinder off of a Civic Si, or you need to get the master cylinder off a 2009 or newer EX model that has electronic stability control. Or if you have a EX with electronic stability control, you could use one off of the SI. The only difference is the port size. I hope that's not too confusing. Use Rock Auto to try to help you out. I'm saying if you're buying these parts used, you're getting them off of a used Honda. You can't have a Civic Si and go get a master cylinder off a 2008, Honda Civic DX. If you have a Honda Civic DX, you can't use a master cylinder off a Civic Si or an EX. Or if you get what I'm trying to say, the difference is just the port size. So, like I said, I got off eBay, $55, master cylinder, Honda master cylinder, Honda brake booster with shipping, $55. Came in a few days. I really think that was a good deal. To give you an idea, your cheapest master cylinder replacement is like $50. Your mid-range is around 60-ish, which is probably what I'd go with. And if you want like an OEM part, which I totally understand, they are the best, you're probably looking at close to like 120, maybe more than that. Your brake booster is no longer available through Honda. You cannot get a new Honda brake booster for this age range, but you can get a rebuilt unit. It'll cost you about $120. That includes a cord charge, so you'll get some money back if you send it back. You can also buy a new aftermarket replacement for around $70. The brand that's selling the aftermarket new replacement is kind of a cheaper brand. I don't know how I trust it. The rebuilt unit is through a reputable brand. Both of these are available on Rock Auto. My concern with either a rebuilt brake booster or even a new aftermarket non-OEM replacement brake booster is basically you have a rod in here. I'm going to show y'all. There's this rod. Okay, this rod is what pushes into your master cylinder, okay? And it is somewhat adjustable. There's a way, I've never had to do it before, where basically you measure the distance of it, and if you get an aftermarket brake booster, if that's not adjusted properly, what could end up happening is either one, you end up with a mushy brake pedal because you're having to travel a certain distance before it even makes contact with the actual master cylinder itself, or you get brake drag because it's already immediately making contact with the master cylinder before you even hit the brake pedal. So these are adjustable. I'm not quite exactly sure how you do the measure. Also, it's a very small measurement, and you probably need some type of special tool to really properly measure that. And I'm tired of buying tools, so I just went with this way, especially for an older, rusted-out car, and it worked really well. And I was actually able to use my little Mighty Vac vacuum tester here, vacuum pump, with the assembly I got. Like I said, it was master cylinder was already attached to it. They pulled it out the same way I did, and I was able to apply vacuum to it, and after enough pumps, it pulled vacuum and it held vacuum as well. All right, so we know what the fix. So far we know what the symptoms of the car were. We know what fixed the car. We have an idea of where to potentially acquire parts for the car. We know how to perform a function test and a leak test. Well, how do you get this thing out? First thing I'm going to say is, look, if you're a novice and all you've done is oil changes, man, this is a pain in the butt job. It's not a long job. It's just frustrating. So keep this in mind before you attempt this job. This is not on the scale of 1 to 10 on difficulty. I'd give this a 6. Okay, oil change is a 1. I'd give this a 6. All right. What you need to do, first of all, you can get online manuals for this car for free. Look up, there's probably on some car forum, just look it up. You can get online car manuals for free. They are not as good as like the 4 paid ones, but you can get the pictures. It's basically where someone has took something like an online repair manual like Honda and basically just scanned over it and kind of imported it in, and it's then hosted on like an ad site. Or you could always buy a repair manual or whatever, but I recommend having something to go by for torque specs, just an idea to do things. I don't believe in ripping cars apart without having some type of repair information, because I do believe in tightening things down properly. All right, your gearbox has got to come out. You got an upper and a lower section. You need to take both out. So, you take your upper section out, which is not too much of a hassle. You take your lower section out, just have 2 bolts, and you're just going to have to wiggle and wiggle and wiggle and frustrate and put some gloves on, because you're going to cut your hands, and you're going to get your airbox out. That frees up a lot of room, okay? You can actually replace the master cylinder from just pulling the airbox out. I don't see how you're going to pull the brake booster out with the master cylinder with the cowl still attached, okay? This cowl is held by nothing in but clips. You literally have one here, and one here. So there's 3 on the lower tray, and you take those little clips out, and then the rest of it is held in clips in the back, heavy plastic clips, and you just wiggle this thing up and lift it up, and this cowl from here to here pulls off as one assembly. Just bloop. And there's videos on this on how to replace these cowls, because I mean, if you got to do work on the back of this engine, this cowl has to come out. So it's pretty common on 8th gen Civic. If you're going to do any type of work back there, you got to know how to pull that cowl. Once you get your plastic cowl off, like I said, it's just held in by clips, and it comes out pretty good. This is an old car. I didn't break any clips. I mean, so it's really shouldn't be too much of a hassle. There's a metal tray that is under that thing. It's a pretty big metal tray. It's held in by 10 millimeter and 12 millimeter bolts. None of them are really hard to get to or anything like that. You got to take those bolts out, and you can just pull that metal tray out, and it will free up a decent amount of room. Like basically from here down will no longer be covered up. You won't have this area of the air box anymore covered up. you'll be able to pull the assembly as a whole. At that point, once you have your whole airbox assembly out, you have your cowl, your metal tray out, your master cylinder here, your reservoir is held in by one bolt. It comes up, there's a little tray. You'll see once you get your airbox out that it's held in by this one little bolt here on the side, and boop, your reservoir now is disconnected from the car. You can actually free up more room. That little reservoir bracket, that the bracket that the reservoir sits on is held in by two 10mm bolts that are underneath the brake reservoir, underneath of it. You can just take those bolts out and take that bracket off as well, and I'll free up a little bit of space on this corner. Your brake lines, now it depends on the car. So like I said, this one has a 10mm brake master cylinder ports, and uses a 10mm wrench for the brake lines. I assume the 12mm ports would use a bigger flare nut, so 12mm. I recommend using a flare nut wrench. If y'all don't know what that is, I'm gonna grab one because I'm gonna show you some tools at the very end here. I recommend getting one of those for sure. Then after you get your brake lines disconnected, there's two of them, you're going to go inside the car. Let me show you your brake booster. So if you're inside the car where your brake pedal is, you see these four studs. These studs just press into the car pretty easy. I didn't have a hard time getting it back in, and all this just pushed right into those holes, and they're just held in by nuts. I think they're torqued to like 9 foot-pounds. They're not tight at all. They should come right off. They're like I think they were 12mm. You're gonna need a deep, either something like a deep socket, or just a wrench. A little stubby socket's not gonna work, obviously. But they came off no problem. And then you have, this is your rod adjustment. You have a pin that runs through this side. So this is face this side. You have a pin that faces through. It goes in here. You see those grooves there. So that pin presses right on through, and then you have a little clip that clips to that pin and holds it in. Super simple. And this rod is adjustable. If you can't see that yellow paint that Honda put on there, so you could adjust the pedal height with this. That's all it's for. I can lower the pedal height, raise the pedal height. Very small adjustment. If you want to, the factory spec, it's a little different between versus was it a manual or an automatic. This has nothing to do with like brake pedal feel. Really, it has to do with the brake pedal height. And once again, this is where the repair manual comes in handy. When you do this, before you reconnect everything, you need to pull out your brake light switch. It comes out really easy. It just twists in. So twist it out, put everything in, make sure your brake pedal is all the way up. Don't put your hand on it. Don't depress the brake pedal. Put your brake switch back in. That brake switch automatically adjusts itself to the brake pedal. If you have that brake pedal pushed down at all with your hand, even if it's just your pinky, and you put that brake pedal switch in there, it's going to make potentially adjust the brake pedal switch wrong. But what's also going to do is that brake pedal switch is going to put just a tidbit, potentially a bit of pressure on that the brake pedal, and potentially cause some brake drag. So yeah, try to get your repair manual. All this information is available online, and it doesn't cost anything. So let's go over the tools right quick, and we'll end this video. Let me go grab the flare nut wrench to show you the one that I bought. All right, wrap this video. Let's go over the tools right quick. This is the flare nut wrench I used. A flare nut wrench is a little bit different than your standard open-end wrench. It grasps basically about 270 degrees of the fastener, I believe. This really helps prevent rounding off that flare nut. This is specifically meant for like brake lines and hydraulic lines. I recommend getting one because if you screw up your brake lines, you're gonna have a very, very bad day, because good luck finding replacement brake lines for this car. Maybe go to a Honda dealer or something, unless you know how to make your own. This particular one is an SK brand. It's made in America. It's a high quality tool. This is 27 bucks off Amazon. Once again, I'll put a link in the description. It has a 10mm and a 12mm side. pretty much going to cover most of your brake lines out there. If you got something also like a 8mm one, you pretty much probably cover 90% of your brake lines out there, especially on Japanese cars. So flare nut wrench, get one. Don't screw your brake lines up. You're going to hate yourself if you do. All right, you got to bleed your brakes, right? I recommend pressure bleeder if you've never used one. Basically, you put brake fluid. This is just a rubber mount cushion on it. You put brake fluid in here. You connect it to your brake master cylinder reservoir. You pump it up under. I typically want to do about 10 psi, which really is the only thing that thing's capable of. It's not the best, and it puts pressure in your brake system. Then you just go around and you open up your bleed valves and bleed that brake fluid out. It's a good way to flush your brake system as well. Much better than the two-man method. This is around $60 some. I'll put the link in the description. I recommend one. It's a good tool to have. Plenty of videos to show you how to use this. You know, look up the proper bleed sequence of your car. Through the years of the Hondas, they've changed, or the old school way was always farthest from the master cylinder. That's just not the way it works anymore, because brake system designs have changed, especially with the ABS pumps and stuff like that. With this particular car, you do need an adapter for your master cylinder reservoir. This darn adapter by itself was $50, but it's quality made. I mean, it's quick connect fitting. It has this nice rubber seal. It drops in there in that master cylinder really tight, and then you take this metal cap, as you can see. So this is in your reservoir. You take this metal cap, and it's kind of hard to do because it's not sitting in its hole. So we'll pretend. So you got this rubber seal sitting in your master cylinder reservoir. I put this metal cap around it to hold it. Oh, and I got this nice little pin, and I'm going to put this pin in there. And now it's held under pressure. Good way to bleed your brake fluid. It's a great way to flush your brake system, and it's my preferred method for sure. Now for the brake fluid, I like to use this new Bosch product, Bosch brake fluid. I don't know exactly. I'll put the link in the description for it. This is like about $11 a quart. Well worth it. It's .3, .4, .5.1 compatible. It's called the ESI 6 Extended Service Brake Fluid. You know, this is made in Germany. Over in Germany, or in German cars in general, they take brake fluid maintenance pretty seriously. You know, they typically recommend changing your brake fluid every 2 years. People in America never do that. We should. We'd have less brake systems failures like master cylinders and wheel cylinders and calipers if we did. But anyway, this particular product over in Germany, instead of going 2 years, was meant to go 3 years, and it's meant to be something you can have in your shop, and it's compatible for basically almost all vehicles on the road. .3, .4, .5.1, not .5. .5 is silicone brake fluid. You can use nothing but .5 in the .5 brake system, and you darn sure can't use .5 brake fluid in anything else. So 3, 4, and 5.1. It has a high dry boiling point of 520 degrees and a high wet boiling point of 360 degrees, far outclassing .3 and .4 brake fluids. And yeah, that's the stuff I used. About $11 a quart. I ran 2 quarts through this system. If you're really big on using Honda stuff, Honda apparently makes a pretty good brake fluid. You could always use Honda. With this car, when it was made, it was .3, Honda .3 heavy duty brake fluid. So, I hope this video helps somebody. This is, I think, my longest video I've ever made. But there was a lot of information to cover. That's why I wanted to immediately tell y'all what the fix was the brake booster. If you have any questions, leave a link in it. Just leave a comment. I'll try to get back to you. I'll try to help you out how I can. You know, this is not my car. I was helping somebody out. So after this week, I will not have this car in my presence anymore. So I really can't answer too many Honda questions. I'm more of a Ford guy. But just wanted to help somebody out with this car. And I think I have. So y'all have a great day. And I'll see y'all next time.